This podcast is brought to you by Enrollment Resources, Innovations in Enrollment Management. Learn more at enrollmentresources.com.
All right, well, welcome everyone to the Client Mastermind session today. Joining me is Scott Spitolnick here at Enrollment Resources, and between Scott and I, we have many decades of work in admissions and admissions consulting. We're going to try to take you through the top 10 responsibilities of a DOA today, which is a topic that seems to come up quite a bit with us and get a lot of good feedback. And we really want to share some best practices and some things for you today on how to be a more effective manager of your people and your admissions department as a whole to grow your enrollments. So what we will jump into today is really, we'll start with the role of a manager. And really the role of a sales manager is not to grow their sales, but to grow their people. And really a sales manager has three key roles, and Scott, I'll let you jump in on a few of these after I mention them. But number one is being a manager of the people, and to recruit, build, coach your team. To be a resource provider, which is giving your team the needed resources to exceed their goals. And that could be anything from headsets to calculators to pencils, but to texting systems, predictive dialers, video chat, video email, all of the technology needed to be successful, as well as those basic resources. And then also be a business manager, someone who can plan and budget and then adjust those plans and report up the chain as to what they're doing. So those are really kind of the three key roles. Scott, any feedback on any of those, or what you feel might be more important?
Yeah, well, particularly the people manager, because, sales manager, director of admissions, it's managing your team like any other sports team. If anybody has coached their kids' soccer teams or baseball teams or whatever, you have the people in place, you build the team, but then it really, really is constantly coaching. And I know you've got some shocking numbers that we'll get to, Tom, but it's really amazing how little time is spent on continually coaching, continually monitoring our people to make sure that they're really the best that they can be. And also to make sure that they're not shortcutting the process. And as we all know, there's a process in admissions. And once you start shortcutting those processes, that's when we run into trouble. That's when we have problems. We really, really do. I agree, resource provider. I challenge everybody out there, particularly directors of admissions, and inspect what your reps are sending out through email, handouts, and I think you'll be amazed at the different pieces that each one of your team members is sending out. So I think it's imperative that those things are standardized, not only from a marketing standpoint. You want to shed a good light on the school with the materials that are going out, but also from a compliance standpoint. Again, I think it'll amaze you on some of the things that are going out without you really knowing it. So I really challenge everybody to collect whatever a rep is sending out or handing out, and standardize that after you're running it through your compliance office. Make sense?
Yeah, all good points. Yeah, good stuff. And Scott, you touched base on some statistics about management, so that's something we'll just dive into right now. There's a couple of really key, striking stats that I found out there on managing people in a sales environment, and we find that about 82% of managers don't have time to train their people. And I think, Scott, you were alluding to this a little bit, but I mean, really, a lot of managers get so caught up in things that they just don't work to train their people. They're so busy with the numbers and the reports and all the admin work that they have to do. In fact, 23% of managers' time is actually spent on admin activities, and 32% of the manager's time is spent just on desk-based activities. So anywhere from a quarter to a third of a manager's time is going to be at their desk and mostly working on admin stuff, and only 14% of managers' time is spent directly with those reps or with the customers, which is a really small amount of time. So we want to make sure that, I think today, one of the gists of this is, and Scott mentioned it as well, that we get out and manage our team and work to coach our team. We're gonna jump into that next. So the purpose of today is really to go through 10 key roles of an admissions DOA, and I'm just going to run down these and then we'll jump into them. But number one, knowing your KPIs, knowing your numbers, and we'll talk about that. Number two, ensuring that you have a sales structure and a process in place that your people can follow. You've got a roadmap for them. Having a starts and enrollment plan, knowing where you want to go. Number four, having a weekly rep report that ensures your reps know their numbers and that you're gathering numbers weekly. And then five, having a report summary that takes all of those weekly numbers and tracks the KPIs for all reps as individuals and a group so that you can plan for training and coaching opportunities. Number six, we want you to be able to have a starts planning and adjustment tool. And we'll talk a little bit more about what that is, but we want you to be able to adjust your activity level to meet your start goals or exceed your start goals, hopefully. And we'll talk about how to implement something like that. The seventh key here is to make sure you're using scripts and A/B test them. So we'll talk a little bit about those scripts and what A/B testing is. And here in Enrollment Resources, that's a big hallmark of what we do when it comes to conversion rate optimization. So A/B and split testing is a key in any area of admissions or marketing. The eighth one, holding some daily and weekly sales meetings. And we'll talk about how those get implemented and what to do during those meetings. Number 9, being a coach. So actually coaching your team. This is not having a meeting. This is the coaching part. So daily, weekly, what are some of the reviews and improvement plans you put together, and how do you coach your team? And then the last thing here is how to audit your team. So now that we've got all of these things in place, and we can coach our team, and they're hopefully following our processes and scripts, and they're doing everything, we're looking at their KPIs, and we're training them, how do we know that they're actually doing what we put in place? So auditing your team, some mystery shops and some post-tour surveys, just a few things out there that you can do to make sure your team is on the ball. So those are our 10 things, and we're really going to jump into the KPIs right now. The first thing that you really need to know is you got to know your numbers. And Scott, I'll let you chime in on this in a minute.
Yeah. Well, I was going to ask you, Tom, real quick, and I know we deal with a lot of different schools. We talk to a lot of different people, and, you know, I have found a majority of the people that I speak with, they don't know their key performance indicators, their KPIs, and that's really key to the whole thing and how to manage your people, how to manage your department, is knowing your KPIs. So, again, if anybody out there does not know their KPIs, you know, I would really strongly suggest that you get to know them. And they're not that difficult to compile as well. You agree, Tom? I know a lot of the people you speak to also really don't have a really good handle on the KPIs.
No, that's absolutely true. If you can't put your finger on your key numbers in a moment's notice as a sales manager, and you should have those things flashing in colors up on the screen all day long if you can. But you got to know those numbers. So, Scott, you're absolutely right. In fact, Scott, why don't you kind of take us through the 6 main KPIs that we really want to make sure admissions managers know?
Absolutely, Tom. Yeah, you know, we really make admissions out to be a lot more difficult than it really is. I mean, these 6 metrics, these 6 pillars are key to managing your people as a team and managing them individually. Really, the first one is knowing your lead contact rate. as a group and individually. And the lead contact rate is, if I give a rep 100 leads, I want to know what percentage.
Oh, Scott, you still there, or something happened? Scott may have gotten disconnected here, but he was talking about lead contact rate. So what percentage of your inquiries do you actually make contact with? Scott, you back?
Yeah, can you hear me?
I can.
Hello. Can hear me?
I can hear you. Might be having some technical difficulties with Scott.
Yeah, I don't know. But, as I was saying, we make admissions into something a lot more difficult than it really is. So, knowing the lead contact rate, first and foremost, if you give a rep a specific number of leads, let's say you give them 100 leads, it's key to know how many they actually contact over the phone. I'm not talking about emailing or texting and them just sending it out, but how many do they actually speak to? A good number as far as
Oh, Scott, you still there?
Yeah, I am.
You're cutting in and out, Scott. Well, maybe I'll take this one and finish it up as Scott gets tuned in here. So your lead contact rate, number one. Number two, we want to know what the appointment set rate is. So what percentage of students that you're actually getting a hold of or making contact with do you actually set an appointment with? Number three, what's your appointment show rate? So of the people that you actually talk to and set appointments with, how many of those people actually show up for their meeting or their tour? The fourth one is the application rate. So of the people that show up for a tour, how many of those people fill out an application? And then the fifth one is your enrollment or packaging rate. So what percentage of those people who apply actually get packaged, complete their financial aid, and get accepted at your school? And then finally, the sixth one is your start rate. So what percentage of these enrolled students actually show up to class on day one? So those are your six pillars, your six key KPIs to be watching. Three of those are most important to me, and one is the appointment show rate. So what percentage of students, inquiries that you receive actually show up for their appointment? What's the application rate, which is basically your closing rate? How many of the people that come in for a tour actually get closed and fill out an application or start the application process? And then finally, start rate. How many of those people that start or that apply and get enrolled actually show up on day one for class? So those are our six KPIs that you should know as an admissions manager day in and day out, and have those at your fingertips at all times. I'm not sure if Scott's back or not yet. I'll keep going.
Yeah, I think I'm back, Tom.
All right. Well, we'll jump into kind of the sales structure here, Scott. And it's really key to have a process and a structure in place for your team to follow, a roadmap for them to follow. You want to kind of comment on that and let me know your thoughts?
Yeah, well, particularly a point,
All right, Scott, you are having some significant technical difficulties.
Yeah, I am.
So, hey, Scott, I'll kind of take you through here real quick, and we'll keep moving as you work on that. I want you to get your people, your processes right here. We find that it really helps these days, I think, to separate your people and admissions a little bit. We're finding that appointment setters, separate from admissions reps, is a great separator, because not everybody is great on the phone, or do they like the phone, and some people are really great face-to-face. So we want to actually have those people that are good on the phone, willing to make those calls, willing to set appointments, able to kind of push through some of that rejection of making lots of calls and getting little response at times. It can be frustrating. I know, personally, I love face-to-face. I love to sell to people, but I don't love to dial the phone. It's not my strength. It's not what I'm best at. I can do it, but there are other people that are really great on the phone. So having appointment setters separate from admissions reps can be key. And then also potentially having future student coordinators on the back end that can take those people that have enrolled and help carry them all the way to the finish line and get them to start. So those are some key ways to structure your department. And then from the process standpoint, making sure that you've got an appointment setting process and script set. What's the process? When do they call, email, text, leave voicemails? How often do they call? When do they call? What's the cadence of all of that? And then having the scripts for that. What's the appointment setting script? What do we say? How do we greet? How do we transition? How do we close? How do we set that appointment? Having your emails scripted, your text scripted. And I know a lot of the feedback that I get sometimes when we talk about this with people is, oh, we don't want them to be robots. We want them to be themselves. You know what? I would like you to be yourself and not be worried about what you're going to say or how you're going to handle the call. Because if I give you the roadmap and you're practiced and good at it and I give you the exact right script with the right tone and verbiage in it to inspire people, you're going to be so much more confident and able to get through that call a little bit better with a much better attitude, which will show up in the appointment setting, as well as having a script for your interviews, a script for your tour. When you take people through your building, what's the path that they should follow? When should they stop? When should they take selfies? When should they see a signature moment or something they want to take a picture of? What should admissions say? What should career services say? What should student services say? So I want to have everybody scripted. It's like Disney World. Everybody's got a job and a script when it comes to this thing so that nothing is left to chance. We don't get non-compliant and we don't get off track, and everything leads to its logical conclusion of helping the student make an informed decision. And then also making sure that your follow-up plan and scripts are in place. The next thing we'll touch base on is having a starts plan. So now we've got our people and our process set in place. We know what KPIs we're going to be watching. So simply, we need to put together a start plan. So this is our plan, our budget for the year. What's our growth targets? And then for those growth our targets that we want for enrollment, we kind of work backwards to set enrollment targets. So we know what we want for starts, and then we want to work backwards slightly to set how many enrollments we need so that now I have an enrollment target by start date, by program. So we want to make sure that those things are in place for our team to work from. And I'm going to be a little bit more aggressive on my starts target. And I'm okay if I'm short, but I would rather exceed where I should be as opposed and set a little bit higher goals than to set really realistic goals that I could easily achieve. From a financial standpoint, there could be a starts budget. But for admissions, I want to probably pump that up a little bit so I can try to exceed my numbers and over-enroll if need be. So at least I have a plan to work from. Scott, don't know if you've joined again or not.
I'm here, but for how long, I don't know, Tom. I apologize.
Well, let me talk about weekly reports here, and then you can jump in on these weekly reports. So one of the things we want to look for is we want to track what our people are doing on a weekly basis. So in order to monitor our 6 KPIs, I need an easy tracking system and hopefully a CRM that I can pull this data out of. If not, a simple spreadsheet that an admissions rep can fill out, taking them about 1 minute every day at the end of the day of how many calls, texts, emails, how many people did they make contact with, how many leads, personally developed leads do they have that they generated, how many interviews, how many people enrolled, and really tracking that, because I think even though that data might be in your CRM and easy to pull through, I think it's out of sight, out of mind for the reps. They aren't, they're working throughout the day and that information is going in, But I think when they sit at the end of the day and have to put in all of their info for the day that they kept track of, which only, again, takes a few minutes to do, I think it really brings it front and center to them, and they hold themselves more accountable when they really see what they're doing. But then you're going to be able to aggregate that data as well for the reps. Scott, any comments on kind of tracking that stuff daily?
Yeah, and again, it's really important to track daily. And I used to go one step further, and we would give a goal to each one of the reps, whether it's 3 appointments set, 4 appointments set for each day, and it's called winning the day. That way you don't have to worry about what's going to happen next week or the week after or for the start. If you could win that day every day, and I borrow that term from Bill Clary, if you could win the day by setting the 3 appointments or 4 appointments, everything else is going to really fall into place. It really, really will. And again, I would also, when you aggregate the information at the end of the week, every Friday, give a copy to the whole staff, to the admissions staff, with everybody's statistics on it. Reps are very, very competitive, and they are their worst critic as well. But when you put it out there for everybody to see, again, it's a great way to get a little bit of competition going and let people know what they need to do for the following week.
Yeah, great point. I love the fact that you want to be transparent and let everybody see what everybody's doing. It does get some competitive juices going. And I also like the fact, Scott, that you pointed out that you focus more on appointments and not as much on the end result of, hey, I need 5 enrollments today. As soon as you start focusing on enrollments or starts, then people have a tendency to lose track of why they're there to begin with, and they start trying to just enroll anybody to hit numbers. So if you're focusing on appointments and you hit your appointment goals, most likely you're going to achieve your enrollment goals. But you're not putting that pressure on the rep to, hey, I need 5 enrollments this week, and they all of a sudden miraculously pull out 5 enrollments, of which 2 of them were horrible, that they should never have enrolled. Right. So you put the emphasis on the right things there of, let's get appointments. We need so many appointments. We're going to talk about that in just a few minutes as well. So, yeah, really good insight there on what you're doing.
Tom, just one more addition. I know a lot of schools that really, really put an emphasis on you have to make 50 calls, you have to make 75 calls a day or 100 calls a day. And I never really understood that because, so that turns the reps into what all they're worrying about is dialing, and not concentrating on setting the appointment, making the contacts. I know when I was running admissions departments, hey, I don't care if they made 5 calls or 10 calls. If they were getting 3 or 4 appointments a day, then, hey, whatever it took. And that would be old inquiries, new inquiries, referrals, or whatever. If the goal was to set 3, 4, or 5 appointments a day, then who cares how many phone calls they're making?
Absolutely. Totally 100% agree with that. So it's really on the effort needed in there. And, yeah, I'm not going to worry about how many phone calls. If you're able to produce, then I don't care how you got there necessarily. So, yeah, good points on that. So the next thing we'll talk about is having a starts planning and adjustment tool. So having a tool, whether it be a spreadsheet or just a sheet of paper that you work from on a weekly basis, I want to know how we're doing for each start that's upcoming. And maybe you look out 30, 60, 90 days, depending on how many starts you have in those time periods and what your cycles are. But I want to know where we stand for each start and what we need to achieve for each start. And we can help you guys with an adjustment tool. But one of the things we want to look at is, what's our start goal? How many applications do we need to get to hit that start goal? So we take our start goal, we divide that by our start rate. If our start rate's 90%, and then we need 10 applications or 10 starts. Then I divide 10 by 90%, and I'll get what my total applications are needed. Then what I'll do is I'll subtract how many applications I already have from that application number, so I'll know how many apps I still need to get. And then I can divide that number by my my closing rate, my application rate, to see how many interviews I need to set up. And I can divide that number into how many weeks are remaining to see exactly how many interviews a week I need to be setting or I need to have show up so that I can hit my goals. And then I'll break it down, as Scott mentioned, I want to know about appointments. So we'll actually take a look at, okay, we know we need, let's say, 10 interviews a week to hit our start goal. How many appointments do we need to get 10 interviews a week? If you have a 50% appointment show rate, then obviously you need 20 appointments to be set. If you have a higher appointment show rate of 80%, then you need a lot less. So we want to make sure that we know, and I'm breaking it down by appointment, I want to know how many appointments I need a week to hit my start goal. That's really what it boils down to. So my focus is primarily on appointment sets. That's where my focus lies, because if my people do everything correctly, we're going to enroll, we're going to start the people, and we're going to hit our numbers. But the most difficult thing, I think, in admissions is appointment setting. So having knowing what your appointment sets are a week. So Scott, is that you in and out there, or?
No, I'm here. I think I'm staying pretty. Yeah, I think I'm pretty steady.
All right.
And just
go ahead. Yep. And Scott's breaking up again. So we'll keep moving here as we move through this. So the next thing we want to make sure we're doing is we want to ensure the use of scripts and A/B testing of them. So I want my players to have a daily plan, and I want to train them daily because, again, 82% of managers don't have time to coach or train their reps. So I want to have a script. I want to observe my people, and then I want to test and A/B split test those scripts to make sure that, hey, if I can give them a better resource or a better tool to work from and make them more successful, then I'm going to do that. And hopefully they're reps with a great learning mindset, and they're willing to want to learn and try some new things. And that's going back to one of the traits of a Rockstar admissions rep that Greg Meiklejohn and Shane had done many years ago. A learning mindset was one of the key things that we looked at from an admissions rep. So I want to split test. I want to give them the best resources I can. That's why I'm giving them a script, and I'm scripting out their emails for them so that they're not using something of their own making that they think is great, but it really is inefficient or doesn't work. I want them to use the tools that I know will work, but I'm going to continually try to work to improve those tools. So those are some of the things that we definitely want to pull off as far as the A/B and split testing. So the next things we'll jump into here as we come down the last three things that we want admissions DOAs to be able to do is, this next one is just so important to me, but it's having a daily and or weekly meetings with your team. Great teams don't just take the field and play, they practice daily. They watch film, they plan, they train, they lift, they work out, they dribble, they do whatever it is to improve their technical and tactical skills. They do it daily. Why don't we do that in admissions? So I strongly advocate that we should have a daily meeting. Maybe that meeting's 20 minutes long, no longer than that. We don't want to meet ourselves to death. This is a 20-minute meeting. We review our numbers from the day before. We talk about some success stories of some of the people we enrolled the day before and where they came from and what they want to do here and get excited. We want to maybe look at some of those areas that we use those rep reports to find out where our reps are struggling. We'll identify an area of focus, and maybe we'll role play on that for 10 minutes or so, 10 to 12 minutes of role playing daily. Now, that sounds like an awful lot to many people, but it's really not. I mean, if you're only spending 10 minutes a day role-playing and training your people, that's insignificant. That's such a small number. But it'll add up over time. But you've got to do it, because that's really where your people will start to hone in and be able to do things without having to think about them. It'll become second nature to do it right, and they won't have to think and and possibly go off the rails so much. And definitely, if you can't do a daily meeting, have a weekly meeting where we review numbers, we set some goals. How many appointments do we need the following week to hit our revised numbers? And then how do we work with other departments to improve our process? So maybe we have some weekly meetings as well. If you can't do the daily, definitely have a weekly and definitely role play in either one of those meetings. Another strong reason for a daily meeting is everybody brings baggage to work. And people come to work with all kinds of personal troubles and trials and tribulations that they're dealing with. Maybe it's, a family member who's ill, sick, or recently passed away. Maybe it's money troubles, car troubles, transportation troubles, child troubles, friend troubles, whatever it might be. People bring baggage in. And when your job is to talk to prospects and talk to customers all day long and put on a really great face and be excited to want to work with them, you got to change that mindset. So having a daily meeting every day for 10, 15, 20 minutes to get their mind right, get them thinking about what they have to do to be successful. What do we got to do today? Let's train. Let's role play. I've now forgotten everything that came in. I've left it at the door. I'm now fully engaged in admissions. You know what? Give me the phone. Let me go. I'm ready to roll.
So
that's
Tom,
really what we're doing.
Yep, I think I'm back with you. But, having a daily meeting is crucial. And there's a resource that most schools have that is really, really underutilized. A lot of schools record their calls. This call may be monitored for, from call tracking, call monitoring, or whatever. And it's a great opportunity to take a few of those calls, good, bad, and different, and play them at particularly the weekly meeting. There's 3 or 4 phone calls, some that are good, some that maybe the appointment wasn't set, and let the reps critique each other on it. Hey, I do this, or you may have wanted to try that. So it's kind of almost like a self-training as well with the whole group.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't stress, and that's what builds a team. It's this daily training. It's what builds repetition of the right things. It reinforces the right things. It builds that team, and it creates a learning environment. And the next thing we were going to touch base on here, number 9, was being a coach. And Scott, you just ran right into it. Is great coaches, they train their players daily, and they're effective at getting their people to perform at a higher level. And the 3 areas that we do talk about when it comes to coaching is, I want to improve people's technical skills. And this is, I don't care if it's sales, soccer, football, tiddlywinks, whatever you may be training somebody on. The technical skills, how well can they do what's required? What is their skill set like? Have you improved their skill set daily? Did you train them when they first came on board, or did you just throw them to the wolves? What are you doing daily to improve those people on their technical skills, on how to do the job, or how well they do the job is what I should say. The tactical stuff is how to do the job. Do we make sure that they have a process in place for them to follow? Just like on a football field, you diagram plays, the sales process is you diagram the process. How often do you call? When do you dial? When do you leave a message? What's that message? You have to give them the plays needed to be successful that will work. And then the last part is the mental and physical aspect of the game that we have to train them on. And for admissions and salespeople, it's how do we encourage them? How do we motivate them? And then can they communicate with others and follow the process, and do they want to learn? So, Scott, you touched on a couple of these things earlier, but we want to make sure we're improving their skill set daily, and we are coaching them on a process or giving them a playbook to follow.
Yeah, and Tom, would you agree that not only of course the training is important, but following up on the training? And I used to sit with my reps through presentations. When a prospective student would come in, I sat in the corner and I just observed and listened. So training is one thing, but it's also monitoring what they're doing with that training as well. And I know you probably sat through many presentations of your reps as well, Tom, as a follow-up to that training. And I can't stress how important that is. And I don't know how many people are doing that. If you're not, well, maybe you should. Sometimes it's a little intimidating, or it may feel intimidating, and, to us to be in there with the reps and the students. But you know what? If you handle it right from the outset, it works out fine.
Yeah, and that, again, Scott, questions of you to know exactly what we're going to talk about next, because that's really auditing your team. Yeah. So this is really, we want to coach our team daily. We want to put the plays in the place, and we want to practice those plays, and then I also want them to work out and get stronger and fitter, giving, again, the sports analogy. On the admissions and sales analogy is, again, I want them to have a process and scripts to follow so that they have the game plan, and then, whereas an athlete needs to increase size and speed and all of that, the sales and admissions person, they need to increase their ability to communicate. They need to be able to role play and train on the greetings, the closings, the transitions, all of those things, so that it becomes second nature. And that's really what coaching people is to help the actions that makes you successful become second nature, so that you don't have to think about them. And part of the coaching, as Scott mentioned, is observing your people. So the last tool that we're going to talk about is really auditing your team. And there are many ways to do this, and Scott mentioned one, and that's observations of your people. Are you sitting in and observing them? Do you walk them or walk with them when they're doing a tour? Do you sit in when they're doing an interview? Do you listen in while they're on the phone? Are you observing and auditing and inspecting what you expect of your team? Other types of things that you can do are mystery shops. Scott, you want to talk a little bit about mystery shops and what the benefits are of mystery shopping?
Yeah, one of the first things that I do before I even speak to a school that is a potential client of ours, I mystery shop their school. I go to their website, I fill the opt-in form out, and I want to know how long it takes for the school to get back to me, particularly a phone call. And it amazes me, in some cases it's several hours, some cases it's a day or two, and in some cases it's within minutes. So again, that's critical. Getting back to the prospective student as quick as possible is just critical on whether you have a good shot to set the appointment. So I mystery shopped my own school when I was running schools, and I also had my reps. It may sound off the wall, but I also had each and every rep mystery shop the competition. I wanted to know how my competition was selling against me. I wanted to know what they were selling. I would have a friend or my brother or whomever call my competition and act like a prospective student. And so I used to have them say, well, I'm thinking about going to ABC school, because I wanted to know how they were selling against me as well. So I know that goes a little bit beyond the bounds, but I think that's an important part of the puzzle also, is knowing what your competition is saying about you and how they are selling against you as well. So does that make sense, Tom? I'm sure you probably did that, but yeah.
It's a good point. We want to mystery shop and it's really having a third party do that. You can do your own, and you should do your own mystery shopping of people, and then also having a third party do it. It's something that we do here in Enrollment Resources for clients. We can mystery shop for them, and it gives them some great insight as to how their team is doing and are they really following the process. Other ways to do it would be a post-tour survey. Something we do in our virtual advisor product here. It's one of the tools in that toolkit is a post-tour survey. As soon as somebody leaves your facility after an appointment, whether they enrolled or didn't enroll, we want to survey that prospect. We want to know, how did things go? Was the rep on time? Did the rep discuss and ask enough questions to them? Did they feel comfortable that they understood the ins and outs of the program? Did the rep promise them graduation, employment? Did the rep promise them they were a certain salary that they would make? Just little things that could get us into some compliance trouble. But just, were they on time? Were they friendly? Did they, did you feel that they gave you enough information, and they set some correct expectations?
And did they feel welcome when they first came through that front door? That director of first
Absolutely.
impression is critical. Director of first impression, the reception desk, that's an integral part on in the admissions process.
I'd even go so far as to ask them, was it easy to find? How was the drive? Did you find it easy to park and walk in the front door? Was it easy? Was it easy to find? Did it look like a clean and inviting environment to walk into? Even those things can give you some great insight that, oh man, our parking is terrible. They can't find the front door, and there's litter all over the place before they even walk in the door. Finding some of those things can really pay off and help as well on those post-search. So those are great points. And then the last thing would be potentially to survey them during, a new start survey is one of the things that we talk about as well with our clients, is surveying them in their first 2 weeks, not only to find out, if there's any potential red flags that could impair them from graduating and being successful, like how's the drive been, how's the transportation issues, how's the instructors, how's the materials, the learning materials, the classroom setup, have you made any friends? All those can be great red flag tools to really find out that, I could potentially have a drop coming because they're already off to a rocky start. But other things you can find out was, did the admissions rep set the right expectations? Is this what you thought it was going to be from your admissions rep? And if not, it gives us another great opportunity to do some training. But that training only comes after we adjust the plan and the process to include making sure that we've dealt with all of those eventualities, and then we go ahead and we train on our updated plan.
That's right. Yeah, and I know a lot of schools do it, a lot don't, but even having the director of admissions, a senior rep or whatever, doing an interview with the student who just enrolled before they walk out the door. Hey, I just want to get to meet you. This will only take 5 minutes. And did Tom talk to you about career services? Did Tom talk to you about financial aid? Did Tom talk to you about homework or whatever? You can have a list of 7 or 8 questions to do kind of a not a second sell, but an enrollment interview or post-enrollment interview or whatever. And that's really, really effective to finding out what the people are saying, but also to gauge the temperature of that prospective student or that prospective start, as well. And that could also help identify some red flags, asking about daycare, transportation, and things like that, just to, get that student a little more locked in.
Yeah, very good stuff. So that really sums it up for us today, taking you through those 9 things or 10 things really that we think admissions DOAs need to be doing. And just to kind of summarize, number 1, know your numbers, know what you're supposed to be hitting. What are your best practices? Number 2, having a great sales structure and process in place for your team to run on. Number 3, having a start and enrollment plan so you know what your numbers that you need to hit for enrollments are by start. Number 4, having your reps reporting daily so that you can see exactly and hold them accountable, make sure the numbers are in front of them, and then adding those things up weekly to make sure that they're hitting their numbers or that you're able to look at their numbers and see where they may have fallen down. And then number 5, summarizing those things on an ongoing basis so that you can see what areas of weakness your reps may have and where opportunities for coaching and training may come in. Number 6 was using a starts plan and adjustment tool to take that enrollment plan you had earlier and see what you need to do to adjust to exceed those numbers each start moving forward. And we wanted 7, ensure that we're using a script and A/B testing it, constantly innovating and trying to improve the tools that we've given our reps. Number 8, holding a daily meeting to help create that mindset of being ready to go each day, and definitely weekly meetings that can be used for training, and try to role play as much as possible. 9, being a coach. Coach your people daily. Get out of your office. Don't be the 13% that only can 13% of people that actually work on training their people. Spend 80% of your time training and coaching your team, and stop doing all the administrative tasks. As soon as you can get out of that administrative task role and work on people development, that's when your admissions will explode. And I mean you will explode. It'll double your enrollments in a short period of time. And then 10, audit that team, inspect what you expect, and understand where your team is on numbers, and also are they following your processes that you put in place, because those are the people we want to have. So that's it for us. Scott, any last comments, anything to kind of sum up what we've done?
Nope, Tom, you said it all, and that was a great summary. So thanks, everybody, for joining us.
Awesome. Well, appreciate you listening and tuning in here to our webinar. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to either Scott or myself or anyone here at Enrollment Resources. You can find us at enrollmentresources.com. And phone number 250-391-9494. We'll be more than happy to see if we can help you and your DOAs and management implement some of these processes for yourself. Thank you very much.
Perfect. Thank you.
This podcast is brought to you by Enrollment Resources, Innovations in Enrollment Management. Learn more at enrollmentresources.com.